Have you been going around the internet looking for the ultimate baseball podcast? Well, you've just found it. On the Dugout Report, we'll cover not only the latest news from across Major League Baseball, but we'll also analyze and break down the hottest games, players, stats, and takes from every aspect of the game, including from on the field, in the dugout and clubhouse, from the front office, and so much more. As longtime White Sox broadcaster Ken the Hawk Harrelson would say, sit back, relax, and strap it down. This is the Dugout Report podcast with Andrew Caruso. Hello everyone, and a very happy Sunday to you wherever you may be. This is episode 8 of the Dugout Report on this Sunday, July 3rd, 2022. I am your host, Andrew Caruso, welcoming you back to the Dugout for the first time in almost 4.5 months. For my old listeners, it's great to see you again, and for my new listeners, welcome aboard. It feels good to dust off the mic for the first time in a long time. In this episode, we'll start off with a brief live update, including what I've been up to since we last spoke, and why this show stopped production so abruptly. Next, I'll discuss some changes I've made to the show with its relaunch, including changes to the format of an episode. After that, I'll go over the release schedule for the summer and the types of new material you can expect to see. Lastly, to cap off the episode, I'll read your questions and thoughts about the current state of baseball, now that we're almost halfway through the season. It's a short and sweet one today, as this is my first time doing this in a little bit. This is basically episode 1 2.0, and I apologize in advance for any hiccups that we may come across throughout. As this is my return to the show, I want to remind you where you can find the show online and me on social media. Going forward, you can listen to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. I used to publish this show on SoundCloud, but I'm not going to do that anymore starting with this episode because I found that platform to be the one where people listen the least to podcasts. So I figured it would be best to stick with the main three with this revival. As for social media, you can follow the show on Twitter at DugoutRepPod. That's Dugout REP Pod, and my personal Twitter feed at AndrewCaruso77. The show's Twitter will be used to send out information and updates regarding the show, schedules, episode content, polls, etc. And just that. If you want to follow my personal life adventures, my personal page is for that. I do have an Instagram under the same name as my personal Twitter, but I don't post there, so it's not worth it to follow me. You can if you want to, but Twitter is my primary social media page. Before we get into the meat of today's episode, I figured I'd reintroduce myself to this community for my new listeners and give a little life update for my old ones, since it's been a long time since we last spoke. A lot has happened, and I'm excited to share some of that with y'all, as well as what's ahead for the future. Stay tuned. I'm currently a rising junior in high school with an aspiration to become a baseball journalist or broadcaster when I'm older, so I see this as a gateway to that goal. I started doing this podcast back in November of 2021 as a way to explore a new hobby and get more involved in the sport I love so much. Now, most teenage boys play and compete in the game of baseball, but I cannot do that due to health issues. So by reporting the latest news about baseball and giving my opinions, I have a way of getting involved in the game without being like other teen boys. I've loved the great game of baseball since I was 4 or 5, and I really started to follow this sport at about 10 or 11. If you follow me on my Twitter page, you know I'm a diehard Yankees fan, and it's so fun being part of the community on Twitter. They make watching the games much more fun and interesting, and I found myself watching more games this season because of them. And I've also made some incredible friendships with the people within that community. Shout out to the Yankees Twitter crew. If you want the full story of my humble baseball beginning, you can listen to episode 1 from all the way back in November. Now, Where have I been these last 4.5 months, for those asking? From November 2021 till Valentine's Day of this year, I produced 7 episodes, which came out weekly, sometimes every other. The last episode I produced was released on Valentine's Day during the height of the MLB lockout. At that time, I'd said I'd be back in 2 weeks because I was going out of town on vacation the next week. I enjoyed my vacation, but when I was planning my return toward the end of February, some unexpected plans came up, causing me to push back my return. Pushing this episode back a week eventually then became 2, and then 2 became 3, and then 3 eventually became a month. A whole month without new content. While the unexpected plans threw wrenches into the schedule, school and other obligations created more hurdles. Seeing all these hurdles caused me to lose motivation, go on an indefinite hiatus till I could resolve things. Now, my parents motivated me to get this thing started again back in June, and I had my intent to re-premiere at the beginning of that month, but I quickly realized that studying for my final exams was more important than a podcast, so that June revival got pushed back till now. I'll admit, I was very ill-prepared as a creator to face those hurdles, but now I've got the time and the resources to help plan everything effectively. So we're back, and I want to thank all my old listeners for their understanding and patience while I dealt with what I had to deal with. I promise a more consistent schedule with fresh new content going forward. There will be more on that in a little bit, so don't go away. You might be wondering, what will this show look like going forward? Well, there won't be too many drastic changes. There will still be plenty of news and opinions throughout baseball covered. Every episode will feature a short news segment where I go over the top news and events from the week preceding the episode's release. Since this is the regular season, I'll also go over the top performers of the week and also preview the top games for the following week. To close off the episode, most times there will be a social media segment, and with the revival comes more listener participation through that. These segments may include posting a question about something in the game and asking for your thoughts, taking a poll and asking for your thoughts, or there may be some weeks where I give you the floor and the opportunity to ask me questions. Follow the podcast Twitter to never miss out on an opportunity. But since this is a podcast for the fans, I want your input, and I invite you to join the conversation after every episode to leave your comments, questions, thoughts, and opinions on the episode. FYI, thoughts expressed on the podcast will be my own and not reflective of other groups and individuals. For this week's social media segment, I'm giving you the floor, so stay tuned. However, there might be occasional special episodes where I talk about a major event that has recently happened in baseball, such as the All-Star Game, Hall of Fame induction ceremony, or the yearly draft, just to name a few. I also might talk about and break down historic events throughout baseball's history, since I'm a history buff, for those who don't know. Throughout baseball's history, such as how the game was impacted after 9/11, memorable postseason moments where Jackie Robinson's path to breaking the color barrier, for example. These episodes will be reserved for special occasions, and they'll will be released in lieu of a regular weekly news episode. All I'm saying is these episodes won't be consistent. They'll be announced when the right time comes up. Keep your eyes on social for further info. I'm hoping these occasional specials will help bring these ideas to life. Let me know what you want to see. Now, my last point before we jump into the social media segment for the week is the release schedule for new content. For this summer, you can expect a new episode most Sundays, except for maybe 1 or 2 where I'll be away or have other obligations. As always, I'll update you if anything comes up. If there is one, social media segments for that week's episode will be posted by Wednesday or Thursday of the previous week. While a new episode will be released on a Sunday, the time the episode goes live will vary, as I am human and I have other things to do in addition to the show, and I can't dedicate all my time to it. I would love to dedicate all my time to it, but I just don't have the time. Again, I'll keep you posted on social for that info. Now this schedule that I've outlined is only in effect for the summer. Once the school year rolls around, I'll have to figure things out, as my schedule gets pretty full at that time. I still have some time to think about it, and I'll let you know as soon as I make the call. Sorry. We're getting close to the end of the show, so it's time for this week's social media segment. So that's coming up, so don't go away. Welcome back. To cap off this week, it's another social media segment. Now, this week I gave you the floor to submit your questions to thoughts and comments on Twitter under the tweet I posted the other day regarding the state of baseball currently, now that we're almost halfway through the season. Now, it'll surprise you that there were no replies this week, so instead of reading the replies that you guys would have submitted, I'll give you my thoughts on the state of baseball going at the halfway mark. Overall, I think baseball is going in the right direction. I think this season has been a very great one. I typically, most seasons are great seasons, but especially in the light of the MLB lockout that consumed three and a half months, it's nice to have baseball back in our lives and to see the season more normal with, the last 2 or 3 have been impacted by the COVID pandemic. 2020, there were no fans in the ballpark. In 2021, the stadiums, they had limited capacity for a good chunk of the season. It was only towards the end of the year, when the local restrictions started to be lifted, that the stadiums had full capacity. So it's just been really nice to see baseball back to normal. We're seeing a bunch of new stars come into the league, Seiya Suzuki of the Cubs and all the bright new rookies like Bobby Witt Jr. of Kansas City's rookie, Stephen Kwan of Cleveland was hot for a good while, and also Alejandro Kirk of Toronto, Randy Rosarena, all these hot new stars, the new wave. We saw the first pick of the 2019 draft get called up a couple weeks ago. Adley Rutschman, Spencer Torkelson. We've also seen a fair share of milestones. Miggy Cabrera's 3,000th hit, which was a big milestone, and also certain teams are doing very, very well. Like the Yankees, this season, as a Yankee fan, I might be a little biased, but this season has been nothing short of miracles. Everything is clicked in the right, all the pieces, the pitching, the hitting, everything's fallen into place. And, this sets up the structure for the perfect championship caliber team. The Mets have also been red hot. The traditional, the Dodgers and, the second place. But, you have the traditional division leaders. We've seen the Blue Jays are emerging as an underdog. The Astros are keeping up to their, keeping up their winning ways, and that's going to be a very interesting October matchup to see in the American League. The Dodgers-Mets could be a potential matchup to watch. Minnesota, they aren't in the same category as the other 3 teams I just named, but they're still doing well. And we saw a lot of big moves go down. We saw all the big free agents get claimed. Freddie Freeman went to LA. Nick Castellanos went to Philly. Bryce Harper has had a great year. He's definitely headed to LA. Unfortunately, we've seen the whole deal with, Justin Verlander at the age of almost 40 has been rebounded after missing the last 2 years with Tommy John. So overall, baseball is trending in the right direction. I think as we head to as the first half wraps up, the All-Star game is July 19 against at Dodger Stadium in LA. So I think as we head to the second half of the year, I think we have a lot to look forward to. I wonder what the trade deadline will have in store. Will we see the impending free agents get moved, like Wilson Contreras of the Cubs and Joey Gallo, who isn't doing too hot, but he's still an impending free agent. We've seen that as a trend these last couple of years, where we've seen the impending free agents sometimes get moved to other teams for the second half. The trade deadline is August 2nd, so I'm predicting these next 31 days will be jam-packed. And just all I'm saying is buckle up, folks. We're in for a wild second half. This season has already been wild, but I'm predicting a very, very wild second half. The first half was just a preview of what's to come. Keep your eyes on those teams I mentioned, certain players, and, we could be jockeying for potential postseason matchups. Everything is clicked in the right place, and I'm so happy to have a normal baseball season in our lives back again for the first time. And the world is slowly but steadily returning to normal, and the same could be said for the sports. I've been to three games. I've actually been going to games again this year. I went to Baltimore and Washington, D.C. to see the Nationals and the Orioles in the beginning of the season in April. And I went to Yankee Stadium in May, and I'm hoping I can make another trip August or September when the season winding down. So overall, I think this season is going well. I think my three main points would be watch the postseason matchups, buckle up, and continue, being a fan. And, we're halfway through, so, only 3 or 4 months of baseball left. So we got to enjoy it. And I think we say that we may never see a season like this ever again. So that's all. Sorry y'all didn't get the chance to submit any replies. Next week, I'm hoping for next week's episode we have more user engagement. I don't know what I'll do, but it'll definitely be an interesting topic to discuss, whatever we discuss on next week's social media segment. So, we've sadly reached the end of the episode, but closing remarks are coming right up, so keep listening and don't go away. So that concludes episode 8 of the Dugout Report. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Once again, as a reminder, you can follow the show on Twitter at DugoutRepPod and my personal Twitter page at AndyCrusoe77. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Please share this episode with your friends and on social media. And before we sign off for this week, I just want to say it's been really great getting back in front of the microphone, starting with this week, and I'm looking forward to creating some fresh new content for you going forward, hopefully this summer. That's it for this week, and so this is your host, Andrew Caruso, signing off. I'll see you again next week. Thanks for listening. So long, everybody.